Pseudo-inefficacy. Sounds exciting, doesn't it? Actually, it's pretty fascinating. Take a look at this graph. Just kidding, I wouldn't do that to you. I will, however, break that shit down to a nice bite-sized cranium cruncher. In short, pseudo-inefficacy is the illusion of ineffectiveness. When you're confronted with an issue like climate change, money in politics, or even more pointedly, stray cats, homelessness, joblessness, your brain reels from the sheer size and magnitude of these injustices. How could you possibly help all the homeless? How can we possibly stop all this corruption? And then you shut off. You shut down, you turn to apathy and cat videos, even though you know that there's a stray cat out there just waiting for its big break. But you decide that there's nothing you can effectively do that would realistically help. So why bother? It's the same reason why so many people my age don't vote. Fuck it. It won't do any good anyway. But that's bullshit. Imagine this. You see a stray cat on the side of the road with a broken foot. It can't walk and it's meowing. If you're not the Koch brothers or Ted Cruz, chances are you pick the little guy up, take him to a vet, get him taken care of, and that's that. You helped. Now, right now, picture one homeless man or woman, one recycled bottle, one less crooked politician. It no longer seems impossible, right? It no longer seems ineffective to give a shit, to apply yourself in making things better. In the Action Sprout blog where I dug this up, the author quotes NPR contributing writer Shankar Vedantam, who said, "People decline to do what they can do because they feel bad about what they cannot do." And I get it. That line in last week's episode about crying into a glass of scotch really is more autobiographical than hyperbolic. The breadth and depth of fucked uppedness in this world is so immense. But so is our ability to counter it. As activists, try shifting your messaging. Don't just ask people to help fight climate change. That's so obtuse. Ask them to help stop the destruction of a forest in their area, or offshore drilling off their coast, or a natural gas export plant like Cove Point. Save the whales? Save this whale. Do you ever wonder why Blackfish spawned an entire movement to help free whales from captivity in places like SeaWorld? Because it didn't talk about all of them. It talked about one. It told the story of one. And one spawned a movement of many. And this isn't about avoiding context, averting your gaze from the bigger picture. It's about focusing on what you can do right here, right now. Don't let thousands of stray cats stand in the way of the one you can help, the one you can film and put up on YouTube drinking out of a faucet or wearing a shark costume and riding a vacuum cleaner. Stop thinking about all the things you don't have the power to change. Think about one corrupt politician. Get pissed at him. Get angry. And funnel that anger through your creative filter and point it straight at him. And by doing so, you point it at the entire fucking system that allows him to thrive. Your job isn't to take down the whole system. That's our job. Major shifts in our world happen because people want to help. And by doing something, by starting to help in whatever way that is, they plug into a sea of others with the same drive to help, to change things. Rosa Parks didn't act alone. She was part of a group of activists fighting for justice. Susan B. Anthony, not alone. Guy Fawkes, not alone. You can do something. And together, we can do a lot of something. Just like one corrupt politician can't take down our country, a whole system of corrupt politicians can. Your ability to be effective simply lies in the act of getting started. So let's get started. From tweets to marching in the streets, this is Act Out. Welcome to Act Out. I'm Eleanor Goldfield, and this is your tipping point. I've never been a big fan of anniversaries, mostly because I don't like watching flowers die or feeling obligated to celebrate a shallow social construct of love. However, there are some anniversaries that do warrant commemoration. Tomorrow, April 2nd, marks the one-year anniversary of the McCutcheon versus FEC Supreme Court ruling. Now, this doesn't sound like a very sexy love story, and it's really not. Like, really, really not. But it's far more important than any sexy celebrity anniversary for the simple fact that Brad and Angelina didn't shove your rights into an oligarchical garbage disposal by getting hitched. In contrast, McCutcheon and the Supreme Court majority eloped to the unlimited dark money corporate government circle jerk resort, where they've spent the past year using our Constitution to blow lines off the backs of underpaid workers, eat endangered species, and drink the tears of the oppressed masses. This sordid matrimony divorced regulation from rich sociopaths by getting rid of aggregate limits on campaign contributions to candidates and parties. What? Well, there used to be limits on how many candidates and parties/committees you could give to. The number is not really important because the limit doesn't exist anymore. Now, people like McCutcheon can give to as many candidates as he wants and funnel huge sums of money through these joint fundraising committees without being bothered by barriers to their deep pockets or shallow understanding of our democracy. And he can do all of this in the name of free speech. Yep, irony. The argument set forth by McCutcheon was that these limits keep him from exercising his First Amendment right to free speech. Let me give you a visual of what that means. Money does not equal free speech. Giving huge sums of money to a candidate is not voicing an opinion, it's bribery. Because, let's face it, there's no such thing as a free lunch, especially not when these rich shitsticks want to cut all public spending, including school lunches. They give because they want to take. They fund because they want results on the back end. And if you look at the current state of the union, they've gotten those results. Not least of all because of this Supreme Court ruling. So, in honor of this anniversary, I want to connect you with the people who are working hard to put the power back in the hands of the people on this week's Frontline segment. First up, let's talk marching in the streets. Tomorrow, there are a whole slew of actions planned around the country, and you can join any of them, or do your own, by going to getmoneyoutaction.org. For you digital darlings, check out this thunderclap to sign a petition and spread the word about fighting dark money and pay-to-play politics. And don't worry about scribbling that crazy URL. Check out our Facebook and Twitter to get the link and share it. Other online resources in the Get Money Out movement include Public Citizen, Move to Amend, Free Speech for People, and Money Out, Voters In. On these sites and others, you can sign petitions, connect with people in your area working on this issue, and get everything from history lessons to activist training and ideas for actions. Also, check out memegenerator.net. There you can create your own meme, either using your own image or one from their library. Use the hashtag #GetMoneyOut on your posts and tweets. Here are some ideas to get you started. But for those of you who want something a bit more tangible and have a flair for arts and crafts, I have just the thing for you. Stamp Stampede. Money talks, so give it something useful to say. Created by Ben Cohen of Ben & Jerry's Ice Cream, Stamp Stampede is a national movement to stamp money out of politics by literally stamping your money with messages of anti-corruption, corporate power, and personhood. A stamped bill can be seen by up to 875 people, and with over 32,000 stamps sold, I'm not a mathematician, but I believe that constitutes a fuck ton. At the site, you can not only buy a stamp, but download resources, connect with stampers via social media, and learn about the movement to get money out, including a 28th Amendment stating that corporations are not people and money is not free speech, a cornerstone of the organizations that I mentioned earlier and the Get Money Out movement. So with trinkets and tweets, there's absolutely no reason we can't give this anniversary the attention it truly deserves. And while you're protesting and posting, be sure to give us a shout out and let us know all the ways you're commemorating this most twisted tale of democracy for sale. Moving on, a lot of this greed and money-soaked corruption has to do with how we view money, what it means to us, how we use it, how we look at the wealthy and their lifestyles and the endless race to acquire stuff and things and shit. Consumerism is capitalism's drug dealer. It's the enabling fuel that pushes this runaway train ever faster and forward over human rights, justice, trees, and babies. As a culture, we take in over 3,000 ads a day, whether we want to or not. Your mind is constantly being raped by the incessantly annoying voice to keep shopping, keep buying, keep wanting and needing shit that you don't need or deep down really want. This is not an easy force to fight or win against. It's an insidious addiction that most of us don't even realize that we have. So, what better way to deal with it than inviting a reverend and his choir to exorcise those demons? As an atheist, that may be the only time you will ever hear me say that. But Reverend Billy and the Stop Shopping Choir are anything but your typical Sunday fare. They are a group of creative activists led by Reverend Billy and directed by Savitri D. And what began as anti-consumerism expression grew into what is now a 13-year-long mission to not only battle consumerism, but to battle the capitalist cronyism it fuels, the injustices to both people and planet, from Black Lives Matter to the environment. Last week, I sat down and spoke with the director and co-founder Savitri D to discuss this interconnectedness of ideas, the rush of protest, the war on dissent, and how you can join the chorus of activists. Take a look.
Consumerism in its most basic sense is a scale problem, right? It's like the earth can't handle it at the scale that we expect it to exist at. And consumerism is supported by an extractive industries like gas and oil, period. It's a really basic connection there on every level. And but there are, I think, more nuanced, maybe more complex ways of looking at it in terms of the globalized economy, in terms of neoliberalism, in terms of sort of larger power structures shifting around to control capital and land use. And that includes the human capital, right? So those things are easy on a very sort of technical economic level to see as connected, and then on a very basic level that if you're out shopping all day, you're using a lot of gas, or there's a lot of packaging, or that thing came across the world on a tanker. So you can see the interconnectedness of it in two very different places.
That action at Grand Central Station is why Billy is facing a year in jail, and I'm curious, why is that one in particular turning into a potential year in jail?
This is not the first time that Billy's faced like actual jail time in New York City. The last arrest, they overcharged him with reckless endangerment and riot and menace. That also carried a year-long possible sentence. In the last couple of years, this has been sort of the how the police have dealt with Reverend Billy, and I would say other sort of high-level protest arrests. There's a heftier jail time, but in the end, it seems impossible that he would get that. It's just basic harassment. It's just a basic way to chill dissent in New York City, to pick off people and keep them off the street. The reason there's a year-long charge right now is because Billy rejected their offer of an ACD, which is the adjournment with contemplation of dismissal, which is what protesters get all over. It just say like, okay, stay off the street for 6 months and you can just walk away from this. So activists are supposed to admit guilt and say, okay, I did that and I won't do it again for 6 months. And then they get to walk away. But there was no guilt. He wasn't breaking the law. and it's highly problematic. But the thing is, when you're in jail and I've been offered an ACD just like that. It sounds really good. It's like, yes, I can get out of here. Even when you've just been in there a few hours.
How have these arrests and how the justice system or the injustice system, how they've dealt with it, how has that inspired actions after the fact?
Well, I think in New York, it's always like a very limited group of people who are willing to risk arrest. The NYPD are really atrocious, and the legal system here is, we call it death by 1,000 cuts. They'll just drag it out as long as they can, and you have to miss work, and you have to show up at this date. And after Occupy, there was a big influx of people who were willing to take those risks, and I think we still have a lot of those people in New York City. Thank God, not God, but thankfully, we have. A lot of those people remained here, and a lot more people are willing to take that risk now.
So the concept of invading public space, like Grand Central Station, for example, is one of your platforms. Talk a little bit about like the various platforms, because I know you direct the stage shows as well. How are these platforms and mediums different, and does your messaging change between them?
Yes, we do work in several different modes, and I would say they are quite different. How you operate on a stage inside that, very controlled atmosphere with an audience, with people who are essentially passive, who have chosen and elected to be there themselves. Very different than how you operate in public space, in contested space, in retail space. The charge, we call it a kind of charged space that exists when you're in contested areas like Grand Central or, a mall or even a parking lot in some places, because it tells you something about normal everyday life too. It tells you how constrained we all are. It teaches you about your own consumerism when you're in those spaces.
And it can be so much more impactful because people aren't expecting you to start performing, so to speak. They're not passively agreeing to be there for a performance.
Yeah, I think in a consumer environment, in a consumerized environment, anything you can do that gives traction. It's such a slippery, kind of slick surface, and everything just kind of floats by. And that's what it's designed to do. It's designed to make you feel really comfortable. You could do anything, like the door's going to open, and then suddenly I'll have a latte in my hand, and I don't know how I got in here. I didn't even want coffee. And so to find any traction with that is really difficult. Part of it's about the language, changing your language, like being broader in your language when you're in public space. Being clear about what you're trying to say, being willing to be really, really embarrassed, to have people really angry at you, and even, physically aggressive towards you. There's nothing like brand loyalty to incite violence in people, strangely enough.
When you do these actions out in public in these contested spaces, music or poetry or street theater, how do you see people start to, almost like you can actually see their paradigms shifting and wanting to join in or actually joining in? Do you see that a lot?
I wouldn't say a lot, but yeah, definitely, because I think people are relieved. I think people are so glad to be shaken out of this kind of hypnotic, consumerized state. I mean, it's just so boring. It's such a boring life. I don't think consumerism is a very satisfying way to live, ultimately. And I think it just takes a lot to unlock it. It's a lot of millions and millions of dollars went into each consumer to get them to be perfect consumers, of marketing money and advertising money. And, unlocking that is a lot of work.
How do you tell people to take what they already do, take their passion, take their skill set, and parallel that to activism and being socially and politically involved?
I would say the very first thing to do is to just know that you don't have to do it by yourself, and that to find other people who want to do it too. And the minute you have a group of people who want to do that, who you can even just get along with a little bit, it all gets a lot easier, because then you're sharing your skills and they have skills you don't have, and you can make something together. I think it's very difficult to go at it alone. So my first impulse would be to say, go find some friends who want to do it too and do it together. Find the people around you who are willing to be brave with you, and talk about it in those terms. Talk about courage, talk about bravery. Look around you and see, where can I be brave? What is the actual physical location where I can be courageous and just find out what it feels like. What does that mean to you? If you are out there and you're thinking like, I want to do something, it might be closer in than you think it is. It might be right around you.
To learn more about Reverend Billy and the Stop Shopping Choir, visit the link below. Now, let's go from the good to the bad and the ugly. Last week, Ted Cruz announced that he would run for president in 2016. Now, even before his announcement, he could have won the Low Life Scum Award, but timing is everything. So, Ted Cruz, you get this week's Low Life Scum Award.
You low-life scum.
Why pick on Ted? Oh, let me count the ways. In no particular order. He compares global warming alarmists to flat earthers, opposes any legislation to curb climate change, thinks the EPA is too heavy-handed, FYI they're fucking wimps, drill baby drill, yay oil and gas, thinks diplomacy with Iran is bullshit and wants more military spending, plus airstrikes and arms deals in the Middle East, is pro-life, anti-gay, anti-net neutrality, anti-immigration, like, don't let undocumented immigrants receive citizenship kind of anti. Gosh, I wonder if his dad's Cuban. He is. Anti-universal healthcare, pro-big banks and corporate power, i.e. anti-regulation and pro-free trade. Of course, that could have a little something to do with who he's in bed with, as in literally. Ted Cruz is the American psycho, or the Canadian one if you want to get technical. But Canadian or not, Ted is a prime example of that lost at sea, off the map, far-right faction where there's nothing but monsters and scribbled Bible verses. One of his opening lines during his campaign announcement was, "Today, roughly half of born-again Christians aren't voting." Yeah, and over half the other mentally ill aren't voting either, but I don't see you lamenting their low voter turnout, i.e. the guy in downtown LA who thinks he's been born again as an armadillo. But then again, he's black, so not really your demographic. The actual problem is that the majority of non-extremist people my age aren't voting. So people like Cruz get elected by those off-the-mappers and the 65 and over, dementia-setting-in crowds to offices of power that they have no fucking right to hold. And this isn't just an anti-religion rant. I could give a shit less about whether the person in the White House is Wiccan or prays to the sun god Ra. This is about using outdated, bigoted, racist, 2,000-year-old fairy tales to outline a plan of governance that seeks to undermine the foundations of liberty and justice. It's about fucking corporate America while it fucks over the 99%. It's about giving you the facts, the embarrassing expose of an embarrassing candidate for the highest office in the land. And it's about doing something about it. People, raise your fucking voices. There might not be that big of a chance that Cruz will win a nomination, but the fact of the matter is that there are people who want him to. Do you want them to have a voice and not you? Do you want them to speak for all Americans when they say fuck gays, endangered seals, and poor people? I'm guessing not. In fact, the majority of people between 18 and 35 favor socialism to capitalism. Now, I don't favor any uniformism, but that's a story for a different time. Right now, we need to get our asses out there because this guy is running for president, and this woman is running for president, and this guy might run, and fuck me, that's just like bobbing for apples in raw sewage. It doesn't really matter which one you get, they're all soaked in the same shit. There are other options available to you. There are good people that have run and lost due to low voter turnout, like Marianne Williamson, or Derek Cressman, or Surya Yalamanchili. There are people that are running and may run like Jill Stein, who aren't fueled by backdoor deals and dark money. These are the people who need you to vote. The people who need you to rise up and take control of your own future and say, you know what? No. Things don't have to be this way. I don't have to be saddled with student debt. I don't have to be jobless, homeless, sick, tired, and wasted on apathy. I can raise my fist and say, fuck you. And that soapbox philosophy was brought to you by Sick, Tired, and Wasted, which you'll hear now as we wrap up this week's episode with a quote by Howard Zinn on civil disobedience.
We're all sick, tired, and wasted. Death's cage, freedom comes in change. We're all
That's our show this week. Thanks so much for watching. This last slide will be all the sites that I mentioned, including a link to help support Occupy.com. We are a donation-run organization, so anything you can contribute is hugely appreciated. Be sure to follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and subscribe on YouTube. Good night, and act out.